Welcome to WACSUN Weekly. WACSUN Weekly is the official Western Athletic and ASUN Conference podcast of FCS Fans Nation. WACSUN Weekly is hosted by Dustin Helton, Brandon Owens, and Will Seiler.
FCS Fans Nation, welcome back. It is football season. It is time to start talking football with some of our friends, and so we've started a new podcast here. You may recognize all three of our faces up above me. I've got the Rev, Dustin Helton, as well as Brandon Owens. Both have podcasts on the FCS Fans Nation network, but we're combining this year because our conferences are doing the same. They're combining on their own. So we're just putting the podcast together and doing it every week as one. So that's what we're doing. So Dustin, Rev, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself for people that may not know you, and then we'll throw it over to Brandon as well.
Yeah, sure. So everybody knows me as the Rev, but SFA alumni used to run the Straight Out of Whack Pigskin podcast. Let's see, I was once banned blocked by UCA softball on Twitter, but they forgave me. So that's who I am. You can find me at the Rev SFA. Come, let's chat about stuff.
Awesome. Brandon, go ahead.
For those of you who might recognize me or don't know me at all, I'm Brandon Owens, and I host the Cocky Nation podcast. So I'm just glad that I have another thing to replace around the ASUN, seeing that we wouldn't have like a big thing to do on that podcast this year.
Yeah, the lack of schools was going to make it a little bit difficult, but if you don't know me, my name is Will Seiler. I was the co-host of Around the ASUN with Brandon last season, and I'm super excited to go ahead and do this together. I think it'll be fun having three people and then just more schools to talk about. And since we're not all playing each other every week, it'll actually be, we'll have a lot to talk about. So we'll have two full leagues to talk about. So that'll be fun. Well, I guess enough of that. We can go ahead and jump into it. So, it's 2022. Football starts in 6 days with your two schools, with Stephen F. Austin and Jacksonville State going at it down at Crampton Bowl, which is behind our faces if you're watching on YouTube, and you may not be able to see it because there's three of us, but that is what is back there. So before we get going though with football, I really kind of want to talk about both leagues separately and together, just kind of a state of the conference, state of the alliance. Just kind of your thoughts on what's going on with the WAC, what's going on with the ASUN, and where the two leagues stand together as well as separately. So, Brandon, we'll start with you. How do you feel about the alliance as well as both conferences?
I think they had no choice but to do this year. Even though the ASUN has 6 members, they technically have 5. But all 6 are eligible for the conference title. So I think the ASUN would have been fine, but the WAC is in a little bit more difficult situation because 2 transitioning from D2 and Sam Houston is not eligible for anything. So I think the alliance eventually will end up as a conference merger between the two. So I think this is just the start of something that might end up happening in the future.
Rev, you feel the same way?
Yeah, let's be honest here. The WAC is in more trouble than the ASUN when it comes to teams. The WAC thought they were good because they thought, they had Lamar in last year, and then they thought they had Incarnate Word. Coming in compete in the WAC. No, it made, for geographical purposes, it made more sense for him to go back to the Southland. But then Incarnate Word, who was supposed to join July 1st, turned around on June 23rd and said, no, we're going to stay in the Southland instead. And so, that left, even with the addition of Southern Utah, that really left the WAC in trouble. Because we're below 6 teams. I guess the WAC could have counted Sam as a qualifier this year, but at least the WAC knows what to do with no longer FCS teams in their conference versus the ASUN. No, but I mean, I think this is a really good partnership. I think there's a lot of history between, I mean, a lot of teams in the conference or in the alliance as a whole. So I would like to see it become one big conference just across the South. I think, I mean, we had great games last year.
Mm-hmm.
This year's kind of messed up because, you know, the ASUN teams built the ASUN schedule, the WAC teams built the WAC schedule, but I heard they're gonna do it for another couple more years. So next year we'll get some good cross pollination between the two, and who knows, maybe it becomes a full blown conference with a different name instead of the AQ10 or whatever they're calling it this year.
No, I totally agree with both you guys. I don't think it's they had an option. I mean, when it came down to you want an AQ, you don't want your champion to have to get in at large, because then you run the risk of, you know, what if your champion's, you know, middle of the pack to begin with. And as far as, you know, one big like super conference, at first, like when you talk about that, it scares me with like travel and things. But then if you really think about it, you know, we did it last year as far as travel goes. And so I guess it's really not that big a deal. And I mean, our trip to Richmond every year is no further than it would be to go to, you know, obviously SFA is pretty close for us. So like, I guess we can't really complain about travel because the football playing schools actually are pretty close together. So,
with the exception of the Utah schools, but you know, at the same time, every big conference has an outlier, has a couple outliers. So if you look at, you know, the Big Sky, they stretch from Montana down to the Central Coast of California when it comes to football, right? The CAA goes from Maine to, you know, North Carolina and further south. So yeah, you that can be, I think, overcome, the distances like that. And who knows, the WAC may bring in, you know, somebody else to come fill in. Maybe they call some teams up in the middle, or maybe they go after like Northern Colorado. Yeah, Northern Colorado. So I mean, there's that. But I mean, if it's just a once a year, I mean, if they schedule it right, it's a once a year trip for Eastern Kentucky out to Southern Utah, and then they would turn around and have Utah Tech at home. That's not, I don't think, as hard on the football teams as it would be on the basketball teams in the Olympic sports to do the same thing.
I think you're right there. As far as like the state of each individual conference, I do think the ASUN may be in a better spot going forward, just because I think there's more to pick from school-wise if we do look at the expansion route. You know, the OVC and the Big South right now are hanging on by a thread. If I were Ted Gumbart, I would be on the phone every day with Tennessee Tech, Tennessee State, Tennessee Martin, even SEMO, or
Gardner Webb.
Yeah. Well, if you go to the Big South, I'm thinking Charleston Southern, maybe more so than Gardner Webb, just to try and you don't really.
But geographically, both of those schools from the Big South fit the ASUN footprint.
They do. And there's some good sports there. Tennessee Tech, great at baseball. You talk about Tennessee State in the Nashville market. You've already got Lipscomb there. I would say the fan base of Tennessee State is probably a little more invested. Being an HBCU, the fans are great. Probably getting more engagement for sure. So I think maybe the outlook for the ASUN going forward is a little bit better, just because expansion seems more feasible on our end. So I know you talk about like Northern Colorado or somebody like that, but those are what ifs. And the ASUN's got some like prospects that are actually in conference trouble. Like they're not in a stable home. And then you talk about even somebody like Lindenwood, who has ties to the ASUN right now. They're already an affiliate member and they're in the OVC. If it crumbles, do you pick them up too? So there's definitely some room for expansion, I think, in the ASUN.
Not to even mention the D2 schools that are in the ASUN footprint as well. Like you have Valdosta State, West Georgia, West Florida. I'll even throw West Alabama in there as well.
Yep.
Like you have some great D2 call-ups that you can easily extend an invitation to as well.
Well, so does the WAC. The WAC has quite a bit with West Texas A&M, Central Oklahoma is there. Midwestern State and Wichita Falls is there. There's opportunity there as well. The thing is of course, with calling up a D2 schools, you have to wait for them to go through the transition period unless you get a waiver or something else. And so at that point, does that really help the conference become more sustainable if you're waiting additional years to have your
Right.
team come up. So I think that's, if we look at D2 schools, there's a plethora out there in the WAC footprint. But if you're looking at schools that are D1 or that are FCS that can already move over, then unless the WAC manages to go to like A&M Commerce and say, hey guys, come over here, or go, tries to push them to Southland, which doesn't look feasible now, given the fact that the Southland has gotten better leadership than they previously had, and their conference members all seem pretty happy with the decisions their leadership has made. The WAC is really, they're on shaky ground unless they figure out something long term.
Isn't the NCAA supposed to be voting on like the term, like the length of a transition period soon though? Because that if they shorten it or they completely do away with it, that might actually speed up realignment as far as D2 to FCS.
No, I agree, and I think transition period is dumb, to be honest with you. Like if you can go up and compete, and the biggest example of this is Central Arkansas when they came to FCS. They ran the Southland that year and didn't get to go to the playoffs because they were transitioned. So
or Bellarmine in basketball.
Bellarmine in basketball, yeah, in this past year.
Like example.
Yeah, that's another great one. Like if you can go up and you can compete at a higher level right away, then you should be rewarded for your ability to do that. And the fact that we have to sit through this, well, we want to make sure you're okay. No, that's you showing that you're okay. So hopefully they get rid of it. And then if they get rid of it, then I think both conferences will be able to stand on their own 2 feet without help from each other when it comes to football.
I agree 100%. I think transition's stupid. Going back to your point about the Southland too, though, a few months ago, the Southland was, the one of the worst, most unstable conferences in the FCS, and now you're looking at a conference that honestly, like, looks pretty good. I mean, they're not the strongest conference as far as like athletics in general go, but they've got, they're stable.
Yeah,
so,
they're not strong. They're not going to be on anywhere near a power conference in any sort of sport. Like I think they're actually the worst basketball conference in all of Division I. But with getting UIW, getting Lamar, having A&M Commerce come in, like they're great. McNeese will always be a program. They're going to come back and they've had a couple bad years and really bad luck with storms that have just decimated their campus and decimated Lake Charles. You've got Southeastern Louisiana, you've got Nichols, you've got 3 really good schools right there who will be playoff contenders year in and year out. And then you've got Northwestern State, who's trying to get better. And once A&M Commerce breaks through transitional period, they have a history of winning at the D2 level. They get recruits and they have pretty good facilities. So, the South End, you could see them start to really become stronger. I don't think that they would be considered a power 3 or power 2, but they wouldn't be that far off the mark if the other teams can do it. Of course, you also have Houston Baptist in that conference, which is the thing that really brings it down. Sorry, Husky fans, but it's true.
Hey, I don't know about you, but UCA didn't have a CVS across from our
football
stadium. You can't watch the game from the CVS parking lot in Conway. Oh man, yeah. I gotta just throw this point out there. This podcast may not be great, but it'll always be better than Houston Baptist's football stadium.
That's right.
To the Rev. So
that's right.
Well, we'll transition on out of the state of the conference here. Start talking some 2022 football season because that's really the point of all this. We're playing football, so we're talking about it. So I want to hear your guys just kind of preview 2022, what you're looking forward to the most, and then we'll also start talking some big games. I know you guys were looking at some schedules, so we'll start doing that. So yeah, I'll toss it to you first, Brandon. You can kind of just, what are you looking forward to this year and some big games maybe?
I think the thing that I'm looking forward to the most is seeing each conference compete on its own. And the one thing that I'm like curious on how it's going to work is how is the AQ going to be decided? I don't think there's been like a statement from either conference saying, okay, this is how this is going to work. Because to be completely honest, you're going to have 2 teams right off the bat, SFA and KSU, which we will get into that more later, that are most likely going to be your top 2 candidates for the overall AQ for the AQ 10. So I'm interested to see how the AQ is going to be earned, handed out, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I was talking to Chris about this on one of his shows a couple weeks ago. The ASUN has this weird habit of making extremely odd ways of determining champions and things like that. So, like in baseball, UCA finished in a tie for second in the ASUN West and didn't make the damn conference tournament. And
Yeah, that made no sense to me because we made it over y'all.
yeah. And so I get, like, they did it by RPI, and I get the reasoning behind all of that and everything, but still, it was just a wonky way of doing it. And so I don't know what they're going to come up with the WAC. Somebody on Twitter said they thought it would be like a point system of some sort. But the thing is, a point system is still not, it still doesn't reflect any interconference like play, because I mean, hardly anybody's playing each other. Like last year, it would have been really easy to do that, and that's what we did. We had a common champion. But this year, there's no way to do that. And so I don't know if maybe they'll like do some sort of quad rating, like your wins are worth a certain amount, like a certain weight based on like quad 1, quad 2. Because I mean, we've got Massey ratings, Sagarin ratings. What's up, Brandon?
I have a solution, but I was waiting until you got done.
Oh, okay. But so basically what I'm saying, I mean, they could do some sort of quad system like that, weight each win, and then be completely objective. And so people with stronger schedules, if they do better, just inherently, maybe have better chances of getting the AQ. But that's the only way I can see it. Because, I mean, you have a legitimate shot for two teams to win 10 games or two teams to win 9 games. And so, especially if those two teams don't play each other, that kind of sucks. Now, they'll make the playoffs, but who's going to get the ring? I mean, are they going to put a WAC champion ring on and a ASUN champion ring? I would assume so. I assume you're going to have 2 separate champions, and I don't know. But it's just, it's weird. I agree.
I mean, one thing you could look at, and sorry, Brandon, and I don't know if this is your thing, but I mean, out of the WAC, it's only going to be one team realistically competing for the playoffs, and it's SFA because Abilene Christian's got a first-year coach, in Southern Utah. So it's, so if we look at it, it's gonna be SFA versus either Kennesaw State or UCA, and I guess at that point you could look at the common opponents that they've had this year because SFA will.
That's where I was going.
Yeah, they'll play JSU. They'll play UCA. Kennesaw State's playing both. I mean, I think that's probably going to be. Yeah, I mean that's going to be like the common sort of ground if it's those two teams. If it's not, then that gets more interesting. What if EKU runs the conference? SFA and EKU don't play each other, but again, they would have common opponents. So I think that's probably going to be the way that they do it. It's just going to be a mess, and also too, what happens with I guess it wouldn't really impact seating or anything like that much. So I think that's probably the solution that they'll go with if they do it. But God knows what the ASUN's gonna do because they do some weird stuff already. So who knows?
Well, if the ASUN decides it, they're gonna do what's best to get 2 teams in this alliance seated.
Yeah, that's true.
So would you say best record first? Like if one team is 10-1, another team's 9-2. Like say SFA's 10-1 and say Kennesaw's 9-2. Would you say SFA gets it, but you only go to the common opponent deal if there's a tie?
If their conference records are the same, then yes, I would go overall record. I think it should go with overall, not overall, the conference record.
Yeah.
You think conference record?
Yeah, because
I'm sorry, but SFA's playing Southern Utah and teams like that. While we're gonna play Jacksonville State. I know you got to play Sam Houston.
I would say we're technically playing 3 FBS schools. So if you count Jacksonville State as FBS because they have more scholars, you count Sam Houston as FBS, they have more scholars. They're also playing Louisiana Tech. So SFA technically would have 3 above FCS level teams that are on their docket for this year. So overall record could be skewed, although I think SFA could probably win 2 out of 3, if not all 3 of those games. But so I kind of see Brandon's point about, conference record. I mean, yeah, you guys are playing Jacksonville State and you're going to play EKU and Kennesaw. That's, you're also going to play Northern Alabama. So, I mean, I think while I would agree that the WAC is weaker, much more weaker than the ASUN,
but I will
Brandon has it right on that.
I will say this: if JSU ends up winning the WAC, the ASUN, it's going to basically give SFA. Jesus Christ, I cannot talk tonight. SFA the AQ.
Yeah, it will.
That'll be interesting. I wish they would announce the way they're going to do it before the season starts, because you like to know what you have to do to, qualify for the playoffs. You don't want it to be the week before Thanksgiving and it's like we're 9-2, and it's like, I don't know if we're going to be the AQ. I mean, at least you're getting in, but the AQ sometimes matters for seeding. I mean, I know it doesn't necessarily matter, but sometimes the automatic qualifier just gets looked at a little bit different.
At least as an AQ, you're probably not going to play on Thanksgiving weekend for the most part. You're probably, you at least have a better shot of getting that weekend off. So
right,
that's kind of that's kind of what you hope for. But I guess we'll see.
Unless
of course,
one of the conferences that only gets one bid.
Yeah. I meant for a conference of our size. I'm not talking about the NEC or something. I mean.
Right.
Although the NEC the WAC might rival the NEC is in their weakness given the current state of it. So let's be honest, the WAC is really riding on y'all's coattails for the playoffs this year. So thanks, boys. We appreciate it.
Well, I think we can go ahead and jump in, maybe start looking at some games. So we'll just throw it around the horn. That's how we'll do it. Start with the Rev. Give us something you're looking for, a game that you're looking forward to seeing this year.
Okay, other than obviously the game this Saturday between SFA and JSU, which we're going to touch on later. As we go through the season, I mean, there's obviously as SFA fan, there's Battle of Piney Woods, but the game I think is going to be more interesting as we get to the end. It's going to be games between UCA and EKU and UCA and Austin P, because I think those games right there are going to determine who's the third team from the conference in the playoffs, and that's going to be really interesting to watch. And I know UCA is a young team, but one Coach Brown's a great coach. I mean, they've got a great quarterback in that UNI transfer, and they've got Darius Hale coming back and running the ball. I mean, that's a real good team to have, and it wouldn't surprise me if they managed to win both those games and sneak into that third spot. So, I mean, for me, it's those games. Those are the ones that I'm looking forward to the most this fall.
Brandon, throw it on over to you.
For me, I mean, obviously I have to say JSU KSU because it's a big rivalry for both schools. But besides that, I would garner to say, kind of dealing with what Rev just said, these games have playoff implications. I think your best games are going to be, like he said, SFA UCA. I'm also going to say EKU Austin P. Did you say that one too?
It's a combination of all of them, but yeah basically just those games that they all play each other.
And then one that happens on my birthday, UCA and Missouri State. I mean, that game last year, the last five.
It was the last 3 minutes.
Okay. I couldn't remember how long it was. It was just insane. And I don't know what happened to UCA last year, but they did not perform as well as we thought they were going to perform. And I think this year is going to be a lot different for UCA, which could possibly ruin Missouri State's playoff picture early on.
Yeah, that's the one I was going to talk about, was UCA and Missouri State, just because no one knows what to think about UCA. We all know what to think about Missouri State. I mean, talk about hype level being through the freaking roof. I mean, in the combination ratings that Chris did, they're literally like an average of number 5 in the country across all polls. So I mean, that's some hype for Bobby P and the Bears. And so UCA gets a chance to play spoiler, which over the past, half decade, we haven't gotten to do. We've been more of the ones that have gotten spoiled here and there. And so that's interesting for UCA to play that role, especially week 1 on a Thursday night. So I think that'll be a fun one. But then the other one that I'm really looking forward to is the Battle of the Piney Woods, because SFA has been picked on. Sorry if this is rude, Dustin, but y'all have been picked on for the better half of how many years? How long has it been since you won?
2010.
Okay, so I mean, it's been 12 years.
Yep.
And
they almost won last year.
They almost won last year. Last year was an interesting game, and I think I don't want to go. I think this year will be interesting because they don't have Eric Schmidt at quarterback anymore. They have Keegan Shoemaker, who came last year and was QB, and he's not Eric Schmidt quality, and so I think that's what makes it interesting. I was going to say the other tagline I was going to say for this podcast was that this podcast is better than SFA's performance against Sam Houston in the past 12 years. So.
No, I would love nothing more than to see SFA give Sam Houston a kick in the rear end on the way out the door, heading on up to the Conference USA, because I don't think it's any mystery how I feel about the two teams that are moving up. But no offense, Brandon. It's just you love to see those teams that are moving. Like, I didn't want James Madison last year to win. I wanted North Dakota State to beat them in I guess it was the semis or quarters, whatever it was, just because I didn't want a future FBS team to go out on top. And so I would love the Battle of the Piney Woods Trophy to come back to NAC. This year.
It'll stay there. And it's going to be fun because I think Kyler and Chris is flying into Houston and we're going to the game. So, and I have a lot of friends who went to Sam, so it's almost like our last dance. So it's going to be really, we're actually sitting in a suite with some Sam Houston folks, although the SFA Alumni Association is a suite. So I'm going to bounce back and forth between them, but it's going to be an interesting game. I think if we don't win, it's going to be like how we lost last year, heartbreaking at the very end of the game. On a questionable, should that have been called a touchdown catch? Because it looked kind of iffy. And then, it's going to be one of those games. It'll be fun for sure. And everybody calls me a Sam hater. I hate Sam Houston. I'm not a hater against their team. I actually wish them the best in Conference USA. I think for what they wanted to do for their football brand, they made the absolute right decision. The problem is that their school has no idea how to market and how to get fans to Bowers. And that's going to be their biggest struggle going into Conference USA and getting the money in there. But, we'll see how that goes for them. I would say out of the two of y'all, one of y'all is in a much better financial spot to move, and it's not the team in Texas.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Well, I mean, you go look at you were talking before the show about facilities and answering that question. I've been to Jacksonville. I've been to Huntsville. There's no comparison. Jacksonville State's got the better facilities. It looks like an FBS school down there. Same reason you go to Montana. It looks like an FBS stadium. And so y'all are definitely in a better spot than Sam Houston. But all that to say, that'll be a good game in Houston. I think, thank God that it's not like the SFA of 6 years ago as Sam Houston's trying to move up and, getting 70-0 or something. So yeah, I'm excited for that one. I think that'll be a good one. What's up, Brandon?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Brandon.
I was just going to say before we move on, because we're not going to talk about these teams a whole lot this year. Can I just go ahead and say that the UNA and UTC game is going to be probably UNA's biggest game of the season. And then just because this is going to turn into probably one of the biggest rivalries on the FCS, I think it's the only two FCS teams in Utah, to be honest, but Southern Utah and Utah Tech. That I just wanted to throw those out there, kind of give them a shout out, because I know we're not going to talk about them, but I think those are the two. Those are the biggest games for either of those schools.
Well, yeah. So there's three in Utah. You forgot about Weber State, but but Southern Utah and Utah Tech.
Probably because they were so bad last year.
Yeah, but they're 30 minutes apart from each other, if that. They're really close to each other, and they're playing each other for the first time. I think in St. George, which is where Utah Tech is. I think it's the first time that they've hosted them in something like 20 or 25 years. So,
they play twice this year.
Well, yeah, they do. They
have a home and home.
Yeah. So because of, all the mess up WAC scheduling. So I think it's gonna be a really cool rivalry to watch. They're not in a bad spot geographically for getting, recruiting. I mean, they're not far from Las Vegas. They can, pull it's gonna be funny to see Utah Tech be better than Southern Utah, though, to be honest with you. So, and then I know this game got mentioned too, but SF, UCA, and Nacogdoches, will be a fun one. I do believe Will is coming to Nacogdoches, and so is CW. So we'll make sure we treat him right whenever we beat him. But that'll be a fun one. That'll be a fun week of podcasting, I think, too. So
we should do something live that week.
I like that idea.
That'd be fun. No, there's going to be a lot of good games, and I'll hit this and then we'll move on. The like Rev said, the third place ASUN teams, I guess, like that jumble of teams will be an interesting set of games to watch. EKU, Austin P, UCA, all of those teams playing each other, and all of them playing teams above them. Those are going to be good games week in, week out. This is one of the best years I can remember for games that matter every week. There were a lot of Southland years that, you could highlight 2 or 3 games, and typically it was going to be in UA, Nice, or Southeastern, and you kind of highlight those games on your schedule and maybe forget about some of the others early on when we were in the Southland. SFA was, relevant, I guess is how I would say it. But there were some times where you could kind of write off like Nichols or somebody like that, even Southeastern at times. So, I mean, it's going to be nice this year for games to carry weight week in, week out. So the next thing I kind of want to hit on is we've talked about, games to watch. Let's talk about players to watch. So obviously we have preseason players of the year, but throw that out the door. This can be somebody that you think was snubbed or you think is the player of the year, or this can just be a true freshman that you think is going to ball out this year. So I'll start. I might be a little bit of a homer, but Darius Hale is somebody that I think is somebody to watch. I mean, I think he got gypped out of the Jerry Rice Award last year. I'll be honest. I think Shadur Sanders won it because his dad is Deion Sanders. But I think that's somebody this year that could have a breakout season again. I've been to some UCA practices. The O-line is only getting better. And so, he rushed for, I want to say it was like 1,100 yards last year. Who knows what he does this year. And different system, too. We have a new quarterback, Will McElvain, so the system is going to be a little bit different. So he may get some more options to not just have the ball handed to him, but possibly get some all-purpose yards thrown in there, too. So I'm going to say Darius Hale, somebody that could, at the end of the year, look up and maybe be on the Peyton Award watch list. So what about you guys?
I would say, so if we think about quarterbacks within this group, everybody's always going to say Xavier Shepard, right? People are going to say Trey Self, right? Right? That's what they're going to say. But no, I think Parker McKinney gets left out.
Oh, are you freaking kidding me?
Oh,
yeah, Parker McKinney, the dude is a stud. I mean, he had 53 total touchdowns. I mean, he's insane. And I know he's coming in. I know it's his 4th season coming in at EKU. But he's what makes that team really, really good. And while I don't think they're good enough to win the conference themselves, I think he will be up there whenever it comes to award voting at the end of the year. So that's who I keep my eye on.
Since Rev took mine, but I agree. I think Parker. I just looked at his stats, and I mean, he was a freaking monster last year, and I just think it's going to get even better this year. I honestly think by the end of the year, he might be on the Peyton watch list.
Yeah.
So yeah. Thanks for taking that, Rev. I will take your other name that you mentioned, Xavier Shepard. I mean, he hasn't really done a whole lot, like definitely not passing, but rushing. Like he had almost 900 rushing yards last year. So I, again, probably going to have more rushing yards this year, but like I got to see him play last year. That dude is a freaking monster when he gets free. And I had a whole thing planned for Parker McKinney. So
sorry. I could have gone with my other one, who was one y'all probably not even on your radar. It's Abilene Christian's wide receiver, Kobe Clark. Man, he is insanely good, and he's not ever looked at because he plays for Abilene Christian. I think he'll pop up on some of the awards list at the end of the year also. So that'd be another good one.
I don't think Xavier Shepard will pop up on any like award lists, but he'll definitely make like all conference. He might be on an All-American list, but I don't think he's like Walter Payton level just yet.
I don't think he'll have the numbers to do it.
Right.
But I mean, he's one of the few, triple option quarterbacks where I've seen that can actually throw the ball really well. And that's, he's just so dangerous.
They just don't give him many opportunities to.
No, exactly. He'll go 8 for 8 for 165 yards and 3 touchdowns, and and that's all. That's all.
QB rating through the roof.
Exactly.
Just to shout out some defensive guys, just because let's be honest, they don't get any love from podcasts like this because we're talking about offensive guys. Matthew Jackson from Eastern Kentucky, that guy, he's a stud. Obviously, Logan Jessup, my boy from UCA. They were the only 2 unanimous all ASUN selections, which is kind of crazy to think about. Even like your offensive player of the year, Xavier Shepard, preseason, wasn't unanimous. I don't know why, but it wasn't. And so you had 2 defensive guys that were unanimous. So that was just kind of interesting. So
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah, those are a couple of defensive guys to keep your eye on, and then
BJ Thompson for us.
I will say there is a QB you need to be watching for this year, and that is Aaron McLaughlin. He is the NC State transfer from for JSU this year. He's so on our first episode of Cocky Nation, we thought Matthew Caldwell was at Jacksonville. He's apparently at Gardner-Webb now. So we thought Aaron was Matthew in the videos. So I think Aaron's going to be the starting quarterback, and he's going to do things this year, like amazing things this year. I didn't realize how good he was until I actually read like his bio on JSU's website. Hey, good freaking Lord.
What happened? What was the last big FBS transfer quarterback to Jacksonville State that, did so good? He broke records.
About that. Let's not. And the thing is, Aaron McLaughlin is the same star rating as Zarek.
Yeah, I was gonna say, where's Zarek? What happened?
Is he still back into Deshaun Watson?
He's gone. Bye.
Oh man. Rev, do you want to go ahead and talk about who you mentioned somebody there?
Yeah, BJ Thompson from SFA, dude. He's going to be playing on Sundays. Actually, I think after the season, he 9.5 sacks last year, and he's just insanely good. And they've also have Reverend Randall also on defense. There's a whole slew of others, but if we're looking at who will be the potential lead in the conference, I think conference defensive player of the year, it's going to be BJ Thompson. He's just that good.
But we got a transfer this year from Southern Arkansas. He was a D2 All-American. His name is David Walker. He's a DN, so he'll play opposite of Jessup. And I know it's wild. Hearing Coach Brown talk about him kind of got me excited. So I was at a scrimmage the other day, and dude, that guy's got a chance to be like an FCS All-American. And so it's like not every day you get a D2 transfer that's that good. And so that'll be fun to watch. I think there's going to be a lot of really good players this year. That'll be fun to watch. A lot of star power, maybe more so than there has been in the past from like our 2 conferences. So that'll be exciting. Now, last year we did a power poll. You remember we had a conglomerate of guys voting in it. It was fun to put up every week. We had some fights. I think I kept UCA at 2 like half the year until we, were sub 500. And then I was like, well, you can't put them at 2 anymore. But this year, instead of doing that, I guess I decided this. I don't know. We're going to do just a top 5, an individual top 5. So Rev, you'll have a top 5. Brandon will have one. I'll have one. We'll share them. And it doesn't have to be anything like super studious or anything, but just something to think about who going into each week you think are the top 5 teams, because let's be honest, there's probably only 5, maybe 6 that'll be looking at vying for one of those 2 or 3 playoff spots from the alliance. And so I'll let Brandon go first. If you guys yours. All right, you go ahead, take it away, and then we'll go after you.
So my top 3 are kind of obvious. The top 2 can be interchangeable because they're going to be your top 2 teams. I just don't know which order. I have KSU at 1, SFA at 2, EKU at 3, and then I have Austin Peay at 4 and UCA at 5.
All right, Rev.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. Kennesaw State, I have them at 1 over SFA, although I think those 2 are going to be just flip-flopping all season. EKU at 3. I have Central Arkansas at 4, and then I have Austin P coming in at 5. So we'll see how that goes.
So I actually just flip-flopped what I thought I was going to do because while you were talking, I got to thinking. So first I had Kennesaw State, SFA, EKU, UCA, and then I put North Alabama, not Northern Alabama, at 5, just because I think there is a lot of talent there. They had more all ASUN selections than anybody in the conference, I think.
I
So
think you're right.
So I think they had 7. Anybody else? I think the most anybody else had was 6. I think it was Kennesaw. But anyway, I had Kennesaw first. But if I got to thinking, if you put SFA and Kennesaw on a neutral site and did a pick'em game this week, I would pick Stephen F. Austin. And so I was like, hey, why do you have Kennesaw State at 1 then, Will? And so actually, my number 1 is Stephen F. Austin. Number 2, Kennesaw. And then you heard my last 3. I think maybe it's because of the brand of football they play. I think if they had met in the playoffs last year, which I know last year SFA kind of stumbled in the playoffs, but Kennesaw didn't look great against was it ETSU there in the second round. So I'm going to say SFA is my number 1 team going in. I think they've got the best chance to make a deep run in the playoffs because of the style of football they play. It's the style of today.
Yeah.
And so, I'm gonna roll with SFA as my number 1 team, even though all those years in the Southland, SFA was like my least favorite team. So,
I mean, it's kind of hard when you think about it. This is also too why personally I'm not a big fan of polls until after a couple weeks in, because you need a body of work, right? You're going off what happened last year, and last year, SFA's 3 losses were by a total of 11 points. The big difference between, if we would have beat Texas Tech, we probably would have been playing Incarnate Word in the first round, right? And then Incarnate Word, really a great team with Cam Ward at quarterback, right? And that game came down to the very end as well. So my thought on this was I gave KSU the benefit of the doubt because they technically did go further into the playoffs, even though they did not look that great against ETSU. It would be really interesting to see their triple option against one of the nation's best rush defenses. So, maybe we'll see it in the playoffs this year. Maybe that'll be one of the games that gets assigned. Who knows? We'll see. But let's see what happens this week with the couple of games that we have, and then after we go through September, I'll be interested to see where our top 5 stand versus where they are now.
I'll say this, Brandon. Do you remember last year with the power poll? How I think from week 2 on, we were like,
oh, it was so different every week.
But we were like, all right, this week we're really going to get some things settled out. Like UCA's playing Sam Houston. Like we'll really figure out who's better.
And then surprise.
Okay, next week the poll is completely different. And they're like, okay, so it's week 6. I think we'll figure it out next week. And then I went back and watched an old episode. It was literally week 10. And I looked so tired.
And
I was like,
one of those weeks, it's crazy to think this. One of those weeks, JSU was number 2.
Yeah, no, I mean I went back and looked at all the graphics because I kept a archive of them, and it was like UCA's number 2, and then one week after Jacksonville State looked bad, UCA is like number 1, and Sam Houston looked weak, and then it was like, what are we doing? I don't know. It's like preseason ratings mean nothing. They're gonna change so much, and it was just funny to think about. It's like, we're going to figure it out this week. This week we'll have a set 7 and we'll know exactly what, and SFA's down there at like 6 to start the year. And it's like, I never trusted them. And so I never put them up at like 2 or 3. And then, oh God, it's just, man.
I think Rev and I were the only ones that had them at like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Dude, y'all are looking into a crystal ball or something, but I don't know. Well, it's like my top 5 next week will be totally different. Or I guess maybe not next week because we'll see. I only see 2 games. But now if Austin P goes to Bowling Green and beats Western Kentucky by 40 or something, then maybe we'll be like, oh crap, put the whole conference on alert. But we'll see. But speaking of games going on this week, week 0, we'll go ahead and jump into it. Only got 2. Austin P at Western Kentucky. Saturday at 11 a.m. I think that's the first game, or is the Ireland game?
No, the Ireland game's first, but that one's still pretty early though.
Gotcha. So we'll get the Governors and the Hilltoppers at 11. It's on CBS Sports, and then obviously the game of the week, Stephen F. Austin and Jacksonville State. They're in Montgomery on ESPN at 2:30. So first of all, we'll talk a little Austin P, Western Kentucky. What do you guys think?
Who wants to
Anybody?
go first?
Anybody?
I mean, Austin P, it's interesting about them last year is that if they scored 30 points or more, they were undefeated. They won every game. But if they didn't do that, they lost every single game they played.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're scoring 30 against Western Kentucky.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to be one of those, 55-3 sort of blowout games. I think they'll get a couple touchdowns on the board, but I just don't think it's going to be a scalp for FCS in that game. Unfortunately, I would love to see the Governors do it, but I just don't see it.
I just want the Governors to be Western Kentucky because they're a future conference opponent, and I don't like Western Kentucky at all. I've interacted with some of their fans on Twitter, and I'm just like, y'all are absolute jerks.
Well, they're fans of Western Kentucky. What do you expect?
Yeah.
They don't have much to live for.
Yeah, very true. But I will say Austin P, I think, is looking to make a statement their first year in the ASUN. And even though this might not be a conference game, I think they're going to come out playing hard. Even if they get down by like 3 possessions, like they're still going to be playing hard, like they can come back and win the game.
And they've got a great wide receiver with Dre McRae. Like, I mean, he's solid. So you can get him the ball. I mean, let him use his speed and go.
Yeah, I agree.
Have you guys listened to like Scotty Walden, Austin Peay's head coach, talk at all?
Yes.
Like, so that dude, I don't know if he's like...
He makes me want to run through a brick wall.
Dude, I haven't played football. Like, that. His like preseason media day speech was so good. Like, I'll be honest, like we had some really good pregame speeches in my time at UCA between Coach Campbell and Coach Brown. Specifically, I remember one at UAB and maybe a chair being moved. But Scotty Walden, dude, that guy is like jacked up. I don't know. He's like got Mountain Dew and an IV or something or what. But that guy, seriously, he makes me want to run through a wall. And I don't know. If there's a team that's going to be ready for a week 0 FBS game, new coach, I'm taking Austin Peay to do it. Now, I don't think they're going to win. I think Western Kentucky is just better. I mean, they beat UT Martin, who won the OVC last year, 59-21, and went 9-5. And so I think Western Kentucky is probably just a little too powerful. But if they were playing a good FCS team, I'd say, maybe we have a close game on our hands. But yeah, I just think Western Kentucky is probably a little bit too talented right now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it's weird. Week 0 games, there's not just a whole lot to talk about with like something like that, which we didn't think there was much to talk about when Jacksonville State was playing Florida State. So
very true.
But
we had a lot to talk about the next week.
Yeah, like copyright infringements with a highlight video. So moving on, game of the week. Stephen F. Austin, Jacksonville State playing at historic Crampton Bowl, downtown Montgomery, Alabama. FCS kickoff, even though it's the second year in a row we put an FBS team in the FCS kickoff. I don't get it, but
anyways,
sorry, Fran. I'm gonna call you an FBS team.
Shade.
Every chance I get. Sorry, anyway. What do you guys think? This is honestly, if you were picking out like a game of, if Jacksonville State was eligible and could could actually go to the playoffs and was relevant in the postseason picture, this would be like a game of the year to start week 0.
Mm-hmm.
And so that it's not every year you get a game like that really means everything week 0. I think you would have a couple of years ago when UCA and Austin Peay met in Montgomery.
That's a good one.
Yeah, it was just, and it was 2 teams that had a lot to play for. Now it ended up being COVID, and so it was like the game didn't matter other than it was the first game back. And so if that had been a true 2020 like first game of a full FCS football season, it would have been huge. So it kind of sucks that it's not going to mean more, but for SFA this game could mean a lot. Because if you go down there and you play well and win big, That's a feather in the cap when playoff committee starts looking at it.
Yeah. The difference, because SFA and Jacksonville State played last year, and that game, Jacksonville State got up,
Y'all should've
14?
won.
You guys got up 14 points in early, right? Off of a scoop and score on a
Turnovers.
fumble. Yeah. And then SFA basically played from behind most of that game, came back, got ahead, and then Jacksonville State won at one with a couple minutes left. SFA completely dominated Jacksonville State in all the stats with the exception of the score. And it's interesting to me to see what happens because SFA didn't lose anything from last year. SFA retained most of its power, retained its star players. We have Self, we have Gibson, we've got Reverend Randall, BJ Thompson on defense. Like we kept all the people we had. SFA had 12 all WAC players last year. Granted, it's the WAC, wasn't that deep of a pool to go through, but it was still 12 of them, even over Sam Houston, who had 7.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're still competing against Sam Houston. So
yeah. So and with JSU and with them having a new coach and trying to figure out their quarterback, there's a lot of things for them to figure out, and they're losing a week to do it, right? Because of it being week 0. Yeah. So it makes, it is technically a home game. It's not technically a home game for Jacksonville State, but it's a home game for Jacksonville State. That stadium's going to be 80% JSU fans probably.
Easy.
But I'm not hesitant in picking SFA to win. I think that they just have it. I don't think it's going to be, a blowout game. I think it's going to be a very tight
I'm the same
game.
way. I don't think it's going to be a blowout.
No, I think it's going to be a very tight game, but I think at the end, SFA is going to avenge what happened last year and get the first of our 3 FBS wins this year. So, sorry, Brandon. So that's my view.
Last week we covered this on Cocky Nation, and I said if this was happening later in the season, this would be a trap game for JSU, because of what happened on homecoming for us last year, with how close the game was, with how close Stephen F. Austin came to beating us on homecoming. SFA is going to be out for blood. I personally think with it being a neutral field, it's more likely that SFA beats us. But JSU, the past 5 or 6 years, has played a majority of their opening games at Montgomery. So this is not a unfamiliar place for us. With that said, I think that is going to play a big advantage to us. It's going to almost be like playing at home. But I think it's going to be back and forth the entire time. I think it's going to come down to whoever has the ball last. And I think it'll come down to a last-second field goal for JSU. And so I'm picking JSU by 2.
Homer.
But like I said, I could see SFA winning this game as well.
I'm just looking. I don't have a top of my head. What's JSU's record in these FCS kickoffs?
We've lost once.
Just
Did
once.
you not lose to A&T?
I thought you lost to A&T.
That's the only one we've lost.
You lost to what's it
That's
called
not
last
FCS
year?
kickoff.
Well, you're not. It's not FCS kickoff this year then.
It's dubbed as the FCS kickoff.
He's got a point. This is now just the FCS versus FBS game. So
yeah,
it's dubbed as the FCS kickoff.
We know what it's dubbed as, but we know what it actually stands as too.
Oh man. So if y'all are cool with it, I think we should keep a tab on the games of the week. So like a record. I think that'd be good to look at, see, and maybe just the games of the week, because you can do some research on those. So sounds like Brandon, you've got the Gamecocks.
Yep.
Rev, you're taking SFA.
Yep.
I'm also taking SFA. I just think I think they're a better team. Got a ton coming back. Yes, less scholarships. Yes, they don't have Rich Rod over on the sideline being Mr. Too Cool for the FCS. God, his media days interview just really rubbed me the wrong way. Anyway, I don't know. I felt like he was like, I'm too cool to be at JSU, but I'm also like, we're too cool to be here. I don't know. It was just weird. That's a total aside. But anyway, yeah, I think SFA's got a lot of talent, and I think that makes up for maybe what they don't have in depth. And I mean, as much as Colby Carthel is, I didn't like him to begin with. I really think he's a great coach. I think he manages talent really, really well. I think you had a lot of raw talent last year that really came together toward the end of the year. And so, yeah, I'm going to take SFA in that one. So 2-1 in favor of the team from Nacogdoches.
Yeah, so I got two things on this. One, we should do something with this where the loser has to do something in Frisco, whether it's maybe by a round or do something. But that would make more fun. And second, my question for you is, what annoyed you more, Rich Rod's media day or Carthel swinging his shirt after SFA beat ACU in Arlington?
Carthel swinging his shirt. Sorry, football is. Whatever. He can be too cool for the A-Sud, but taking your shirt off after beating Abilene Christian was just a little much. And hopefully we'll get to have somebody like that on here. Like maybe we get to have him and I can talk to him about it because, I've interacted with him on Twitter a little bit, but I'd love to talk to him about it.
I'll reach out to Ryan Ivy and see what we can do.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of, an FCS like program. It's not too big for us to go get an AD or a head coach. So,
and Ryan listens to all this stuff. So Ryan, I know you're gonna listen to this once it's out. So let's talk about getting Colby on, or even let's get Ryan Ivy on. We had him on the WAC podcast last year. He's great, a great guy to talk to. It'd be fun to get the ASUN commissioner on so he can go.
Oh yeah, he has said he's down. I mean, maybe we could put him on the hot seat and tell him, how's the AQ going to be decided?
Exactly.
Answer us now. We could. I think we could do some really cool stuff this year. I'm excited about it. I hope you guys are too. We'll keep a tab on the games and we'll figure out what Brandon's going to have to do in Frisco because it sounds like he's picking emotionally. So, all right. Any last words? Any last words before we sign off for week 0?
Brandon, go ahead.
I'm ready for football. This weekend was horrible for me. I woke up yesterday morning. I was like, isn't there football on today?
It feels like there should be. I'm telling you, the week before week 0 feels like there should be football because everybody's fall camp is coming to an end. Everybody's, football content is out on Twitter. All the official, ESPN accounts are tweeting college football. Game Day's account is active right now. And so it really feels like there should be football. And then it's just like a big buzzkill. It's like, nope, no football for another week.
Yeah, no, I agree there. The only thing I did this weekend was prep, for next weekend, figure out what I want to cook for the game, if we want to, fry some chicken. Closest thing I can get to a Gamecock, I don't know, but I mean, in all seriousness, I'm so happy football is back. It's nice to see the podcast start coming out. It's awesome to randomly see Cocky Nation out on out last week, and I know the boys on the main FCS Fans Nation podcast are getting prepped. They've done their other shows too. Chris is all over the place with his show. It's great to have all of this back. This is the best time of year to enjoy sports. That and watching Big Ten basketball because Brandon and I both are Big Ten basketball guys. So those are the two. This is great. I'm excited. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to watch SFA and JSU on ESPN. It's gonna be awesome. And it's gonna be great for both the schools to be on ESPN also. And it's going to be great for I think the conferences also.
No doubt. They'll have something to talk about. They'll talk about the WAC ASUN Alliance. It'll be great. So,
they'll probably talk about Ohio State or something. The whole time.
You're probably right. They'll have their Final Four predictions up at the end of the first quarter. But as you alluded to, I was going to talk about FCS Fans Nation. If you're not a subscriber to the FCS Fans Nation YouTube channel, go smash that subscribe button, drop a like and a comment on these videos. We have a lot of great content coming at you. It's not just our podcast. It's the main FCS Fans Nation channel. Jackrabbit Illustrated or they call it Splitting Hairs. Is that the podcast name? Splitting Hairs. Okay.
Yeah, and then they have the B team also. And then they have the B team.
Yes, they have the B team as well.
Brendan and Ben. So
So a lot of great South Dakota State content there. Just added a Montana podcast, Fight on Montana. Obviously, you have Jacksonville State, Cocky Nation, Eagles Power Hour with Kyler. If you're an Eastern Washington fan, the Football Chris Show. If you're just an FCS fan, I'm trying to roll through some of these here. What else? Do we have anything else that I'm leaving out?
I think we named all of them.
I think that's it.
That's
Obviously,
impressive.
Yeah, good job, Will.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I was really rehearsing that. No, we had Around the ASUN, obviously, is combined into this, as well as the WAC, Straight Out of WAC Pigskin podcast. So, a lot of great content coming at you from FCS Fans Nation. So make sure, hit that subscribe button and get notified every time a video is made, and hopefully every time we go live, because, we're not live right now, but maybe later in the season we'll do some live episodes, maybe some halftime episodes. There's a lot of great stuff we could do with YouTube. So make sure you're paying attention to that. So that's it for me. It for you?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Let's have some fun this week, guys.
Yeah. We'll be back next week, maybe at halftime of that game. That'd be kind of fun.
That'd be fun. Let's do a
Halftime
quick halftime. We should go live at halftime.
I was about to. No, I will not be going live at halftime. My sister's performing. I will not be doing that.
Well, okay. Maybe me and Rev will be live at halftime. So
I can hop on after.
Okay. Keep a tab on the notifications. That way you might see us live during halftime of the first FCS game of the year. So we will see everybody next week.